Last time we say to apply policies to our application, we have to first create an API instance or like configuration. What we create in API manager is an API instance. And when we create an API instance in API manager, it gives us an ID, and that ID, we add it to our implementation, to the actual code in Anypoint Studio. In addition to the API ID, we also add the client ID and the client secret of the environment that we are going to deploy the app to. So once we push our application to runtime manager, now runtime manager can communicate with API manager, and it can detect what policies have been applied and download the policies and apply them. And further, runtime manager pushes analytics to API manager is what we saw. And we saw how to create an API instance in API manager. And what we did was, let me go to API manager. We have this add API. We can add a new API or import API from zip file. Like if you have, for example, in the same company as the people, if they have the specification and they exported it and give us a zip file, we can also import it like this. The way to create an API instance in API manager. The other way is also if you have under the add new API here, we say we can, once we choose this specification, we will see a proxy tomorrow, but what we created so far is basic endpoint. So once you click next, it brings you here, and here you can create an API instance either by selecting an API instance from Exchange if you have it in Exchange, or if you click this create new API, then you upload your API specification, and then what it does is it uploads it to Exchange and creates an instance from it. So like by default, this says get flights, it doesn't matter. Let me click next. Under asset type, we choose REST API and upload RAML. If I have the RAML file also like that someone worked on and gave me, or I got RAML file online and I want to practice with it also, I can just choose upload and just upload that file. That also will work fine. So in API manager, we can create an API instance in 3 different ways: by selecting from Exchange if you have one push it from Exchange, or if we have a zip file of an API instance downloaded, we can upload that zip file, or if we have RAML specification also, we can import that RAML specification, and what it will do is it will publish it to Exchange and create an API instance for it. And in addition to that, we started looking at different policies and what they are used for. Applying policies, it is called non-functional requirement. So there are functional requirements and non-functional requirements. So the actual implementation, starting from the RAML specification and taking it to Anypoint Studio and building it and so on, is called functional requirements. Whereas the other things that help the application to work smoothly, efficiently, and securely are called non-functional requirements. So applying policies so that it is secure, so that it is smooth, so that it works the way it is intended to be, is called non-functional requirement. And we started looking at the different policies. We saw basic authentication. It was just providing a username and password. We saw also client ID enforcement. We saw rate limiting, to limit traffic per specified time. Also, we saw rate limiting, SLA based. This is service level access. So for different service levels, that means for different clients, we can give different rate limiting policies. Like for some of them, the automatic free version, it could be 10 requests per minute, for example, whereas for those that have that, for example, clients that pay, it could be 10,000 per minute, and they have to pay for that, and so on. We saw that. And today we are going to see this one, spike control. Let me highlight it here. We will see spike control, message logging, and also we'll see alert, create an alert. And the other one is probably we'll see, let's see, this one also, this one and this one together. And the rest of them, we will see them another time. After we see these ones, I have also Kahoot, so we'll do the Kahoot also together. So, okay, so to apply policies, we go to API Manager again. And by the way, the list of available policies, out-of-the-box policies. So we have two types of policies, out-of-the-box policies provided by MuleSoft, and also you can apply custom policies based on requirements, because different companies could have different requirements. And the out-of-box policies are here. So if you click this one, it will take you to this page, and you can read what each policy does from this directory, included policies directory, you can see here. So we are looking at out-of-the-box policies. We will see another time, we will see how to apply custom policies. Okay, having said that, so now I am in API Manager. Or the other things that I want to quickly mention is also, let's see this one. So in access management, you can invite people to use to have access to your environment and to be part of that environment. So you go to users here. This is so here, if you see organization users and the external users are people who requested their application, whereas people from the same organization that you want to collaborate with, you just click here and invite them. So like, for example, I can invite, I just created a dummy email for this purpose, class MuleSoft@gmail.com. And there are different roles. You can assign them some role. I'll just give them this one. Let's see. I will just exchange viewers only. Exchange contributor, exchange viewers, for example, for this specific purpose. You send an invitation. Now, in my other email, this one is the email, and I should get an email with the invitation. Here is an invitation. As you can see, it looks like this. The font is small, I think. Okay. So invitation to endpoint platform, here is a link. So the other person has to click and see this, and they can see my exchange, the different assets I have there, and they can access request forms there, and so on. Okay. So let's go to applying policies, the different policies. Let's experiment with the different policies. So click here under policies. The policies are categorized into 5. If you just come to policies here and add policy, you have policies for security, quality of service, compliance, transformation, and troubleshooting. And mainly we focused last time on we saw one from compliance, from security, and quality of service. So from quality of service, we saw Rate limiting SLA based for different clients. So this is service level access. We saw also rate limiting. Whereas this spike control, if we just let's open this, you can open this and read it. So it creates time windows and it makes sure the traffic in that time window is not above the specified number. And if it is above that, then the requests are queued and they have to wait until the time window is reset. So let's try that. So click here, spike control, and next. So maximum quota allowed per time window. Let's say, just to expedite the experiment, I will make it small. So let's say 3 window size in milliseconds. So this is 1 second. Or I can make it, yeah, let's make this in 5 seconds. So this will reset every 5 seconds. So this is 5,000 in milliseconds, which means it is 5 seconds. And there is delay time in milliseconds. So here, if you read, it says, make sure you can read it. Okay, here it says amount of time request will be delayed before retrying. Delaying is a CPU intensive process. So what it does is before it gives you an error, it delays if the time window, this limit in a given sliding time window. So think of a sliding time window of 5 seconds. In each 5 seconds, this application, it doesn't accept more than 3 requests. And if there are more than 3 requests, it queues them. So it puts them in line and they have to wait. And if the time window is not, the sliding time window is not reset, and a new time window doesn't start within 1 second, it will try the request and it is still in that same time window. So it will give you an error. And here also the maximum number of times the policy will try to process the request if there is no quota available. So how many times do you want it to try? How many times do you want it? Like how many 1,000 milliseconds do you want it to wait and try? So just try only 2 times or 1 time. And then after it tries and all this is exhausted, you will get an error. And there is the maximum number of concurrent requests that can be waiting to be retried. So if there are multiple requests coming from different clients at the same time, and the number of requests in a given sliding window, which is 3, has been met already, it queues 5 of the new requests until for the next time window, for the next sliding time window. But any requests coming after the 5 requests in that same time window, it will just return an error saying that quota has been exceeded. So we can add here also the header so that we can see the number of requests remaining and so on. Like before, under advanced here, you can select the version, which is usually, it makes sense to choose the latest. And do you want to apply this to specific messages and API, to specific messages and resources, or to all messages and resources? Also, you can see here, I will just leave the first radio button selected, the default one. But like, for example, the post messages and get messages, your requirements could be different. And in that case, you have to come here and choose a specific method from specific resource. So now let's apply this. And we say for a policy to be applied, it takes some time, about 20-30 seconds. And whether it has been applied or not, you can see it by going to Runtime Manager. So if I come here under Runtime Manager for that API in the logs, training, this is the API, so the actual implementation. And under logs, we see it has not yet been applied. There is policy ID client enforcement unapplied here because I removed what we were testing before. So here it says unapplied. This policy has been unapplied. One is the spike control is applied also, we'll see here. Let me just refresh it. See here, it says applied policy spike control. So this is spike control. So it controls the traffic to your API and it makes sure bad actors don't abuse your application and crash your application by overwhelming it with lots of traffic. So now let's test it. So where is it? To see API is here. This is a domain. Just select, take this and add the path and the API and the resource. So take this, I will check it in endpoint platform. We have it here actually. So we have this one. We don't have any client ID enforcement right now because I removed that. So we don't need to send any headers, or we don't need authentication username and password also. So just send. So it waited for 1 second. And since I say just try, only retry one time after waiting for 1 second, then it gave me quota has been exceeded. Now, if I try, since it is another time window of 5 seconds, it is going to return data. So this is just dummy settings to expedite the experiment, but in real cases, it could be the traffic per hour, for example, that you do. The time windows will not be this small. So now I get again 1, 2, 3. See, it is trying. Then quota has been exceeded. We can expand. We can even relax the how many times it should retry. So edit configuration. I can come here and delay attempts. Let me make this 10 so that we can see the difference. We can notice the difference. Time window size in milliseconds also. I will change this to 10 seconds. 10 seconds, 10 times. And the queue limit, yeah, it is only from my side. So save it. So again, we have to give it some time until this policy gets. So what is it saying? Should be less than time window size in milliseconds should be less than 5 seconds. Oh, okay. So let me make this 5 seconds. This is interesting. Okay, so okay, that means this is a threshold. This is a threshold. Save, and we made it to attempt 10 times. Basically, so if it is 5 seconds, actually, I don't need 10 attempts. 5 attempts should be enough, or 4. Save. And again, let's see in Runtime Manager if this has been applied in logs. Come here. I think this one is not a new one. The spike control, I think it is this one. Yeah, okay, spike control, I see here. Yeah, perfect. So this is the new one, with the new setting. Now let's test it again. So if we send 1, 2, 3, 4, see, it takes some more time. Now I can see. So it waited for 4 more seconds, requesting again and again until the time window gets reset. 1, 2, 3, 4. You can see the lag. So it is retrying again and checking again and again if the 5 window times second has been reset. So this is spike control. And quickly, by the way, the other thing we saw last time is about the client ID enforcement. We saw we can use HTTP request header or also custom header. And let me go to here, add policy. Let me add client ID enforcement. It is under compliance, or you can simply search it here, or you can see all the available policies by scrolling down like this. So under compliance, I have client ID enforcement. I want to show you one thing that we didn't test. So we tested HTTP basic authentication header. If you select this one, client ID is a username. So if you do that, you come to authentication, basic authentication, and the client ID, put it in is a username, and the client secret, you put it in password. The other thing was if you select custom expression, we took just the default, these ones, we didn't change them. So client ID and client secret, we passed them in the header section. We went to headers and we added them here. Now I will remove these ones since I'm not sure if they are related to this application. So we added them here. We tested that. Another way is this is custom, so you can change this data with expression, and it can be in the headers. Like it can also be as query parameters. So I can select, I can pass as attributes dot query params dot client ID and attributes dot query params dot client secret. So the client secret and the client ID, I'm here passing them for as query params. So let's add this also and test that. So we can pass them as query params also. So I want you to be aware of that also. So come here, let's see if the client ID enforcement has been applied. It is still not yet applied here. It should take 20 to 30 seconds maximum, I hope. Okay, here it says client ID enforcement has been applied, as you can see. And now I can go to Exchange and get this other username. Okay, I will close this and go to Exchange with the same username and password. The same username logged in. So go to Exchange, and it is so this public portal. Let me see my applications. I have this one application. Yeah, I have the client ID and the client secret here. So copy this, can bring it. So now, rather than to headers under header section, you add it under params. So we have one param, data is a key, and order the value, as you can see here. When you specify query params here, the key values are also added here. So client ID and the secret also, I can just type them here, or I can just put it here. Client ID is a key, and paste it here. And so the client ID and the client secret, they should be exactly spelled as it is spelled in here in the policy in our data weave code. So in the data weave code, see here, policies, client ID enforcement. So the key should be exactly like this. I can also call them something else. It should be exactly like this. So client underscore ID. Now, if we just exclude the underscore, since it is going to look for under the attributes for a query param called client underscore ID, it will not work. If you forget that here, if I just make this client ID like this, for example, it will not work. So client underscore ID, and let's bring client secret also. Which one was okay here? So just show, copy, and here client. You can see when I copy paste the key value pairs here, it is also automatically completing it here, adding it there, that information. So this one, now I have two policies. We are going to talk also the order of the impact, the priority or the order, the impact or the control of the policies when you have different policies. Which policy is executed first? Which policy has priority? So click next. So that's right. So to make it data with expression, so let's remove this. If we just remove this, what we write here is string. So to make it data with expression, we add this hash sign and square bracket. Everything we put here is a data with expression. So I have to put like this. This one have to put like this, and I don't need this. So this one is the data with code, and when these are to make it an expression. So rather than string, to make it a data with expression. Yeah, that's right. So this one also, let's make it end client secret. Save. Okay. Okay. Yeah, right. Yeah, right. I was so absent-minded to forget that. Okay. Okay. So basically, that square bracket is here. If you see, for example, let's add some transform message or set payload. Let me drag and drop set payload or set variable. You see this? Now this is a string, and to make it an expression, if you click FX, it becomes an expression, and whatever you write here is evaluated as code. And what it is adding is this hash sign followed by opening square bracket and closing square bracket at the end. So that was what I was confusing. Okay, now this one should be applied. Now let's test this. Yep, now it works fine. Yeah, now the spike control is also in effect. That's what we see here. Requesting, sending requests again and again. Okay, perfect. Sorry, this took a little bit more time. Now let's see message logging. So let's add message logging. If you go under policies and add policy, go to message logging is for troubleshooting, for understanding how your application is working, or if there are any problems to debug that, to troubleshoot that. So it is under troubleshooting. Just select troubleshooting, then message logging, click next. And the logs you want to apply, do you want them from the requests before they get sent to the application, to the backend, to the real implementation? Or do you want to log information about what gets returned from the application to the client? Client is the user. So we see here before calling an API, after calling an API. Before calling means the request from the request part, after calling means from the response part. And the level here, if you see there is info, this means information, general information. Or do you want only when there is warning, or do you want when there is only error, or do you want it for debug? So if you select debug, it is very verbose. It includes the most exhaustive information. Error is only if there is error. Warning is when there is warning. And info is just general information. So we'll go with information. So login configuration, you can give configuration name here. I will call this before API, before calling. The other one I will call it after calling. So you put data with code here. Let's, for example, just log the payload first. So this is the same thing here. I should not make another mistake. So we do this. And we put our data with code here. So I will put payload. Actually, since this is a get message, we are not getting data, right? We are not sending data. we are getting payload, but we are not sending payload. So let's add here what is requested from the query parameters, the data requested. If you see here, you can specify orders, purchases, and so on. So I want to log that. So it will be attributes dot query params here data. So data is a query param and the other square bracket. Now I will not forget you. Okay. So you see attributes dot query p should be uppercase. Params data. We have 2 square brackets from this side. We have 2 square brackets from this side also. Okay. And you can also add conditional here. Like, for example, do you want it to log only when some condition is fulfilled? Like, we can add when the data is orders or purchases, for example. And for now, I will leave it. And the other one is prefix in the log sentence. You can add also some sentence to be added by default in the prefix. Let's leave that for now. Add. This is before calling the API. Now we can also add more. The configuration. This one I will call it after calling. Data with message. Now I want the payload. Actually, you don't need. Usually you don't log the payload, but rather some information about it, about the metadata, some metadata. But for now, to show you, I will just log the payload. And again, yeah, this should be fine. Just from both sides, only one bracket. And the same thing conditional also you can add here. Now this one I'll change it to after calling the API. So when a request is sent, we are logging which data are they requesting for. And when data is returned, we are logging the data that was returned to them. Apply. Okay. This one, let's see. Did not yet applied. Let me check what I want to cover. Okay. Did I save it? Let's see. Where was I here? Message logging. Yes, we see it message logging here. So refresh it. Give it some time. Live console. Okay. Okay, perfect. Here it comes, as you can see. It refreshes itself. Applied policy message login. Now, when we send requests, we will get a request on which data was requested and also the actual payload. Let's do that quickly. So far we have 3 policies applied. Okay. So come here, send, and it is, as you can see, orders, and this is the data. Now, if we go to logs, you see it under logs here. So you don't log payload, right? Especially when the data is not like this, you just log some information like the size of the payload. So you see here orders. Rather than simply saying orders, even these orders, we don't know what it is. We can say the following data was requested. Let's change this to the following data was requested. And here in the payload, rather than just logging the payload itself, let's log the size, how many requests were returned. Edit configuration before calling. So here what I can do is string quotation, the following data was requested. Okay. Concatenate this part. string, and this also string. So this one it is string, so I will request it. Okay, like this. The following data was requested. And in the other one, rather than saying payload, I will do, and the size of the returned payload is. So now we can use the function size of payload, like this. Size of payload. When you have to word this, the function of each starting word, the first word of each starting of new word should be uppercase. So that's why this O is uppercase. And this is a string. So we are concatenating string. And this one is a number, so we have to change it to string. As a string. As a string. Converted that as a string. And the default, I will make it 0. Default 0. Let's save this. Okay. So we go here. Let's come here. Let's give it some time. The other thing that we will talk about is now we have multiple policies. We'll talk about the order of their impact. And the order of the impact of the policies is opposite when it is sending request and sending response. When it returns response versus when we send request to it. Okay. And for today, the only thing I have now is, okay, these ones we will not cover them today. We'll cover them another time. So we'll use them here. We will see this one, alerts, and then we have count session after that. Only a few questions. Okay. So if you come here, this is the policy has been applied, message logging. This is the updated policy because this logs from before as that. Now I can send requests again. I hope I don't have any typos there. Okay, perfect. Now if we go here at the bottom, you see the following data was requested. It was orders. And you see here, and the size of the returned payload is 196 rows. We can try also with another data products. Okay, perfect. Now for products, here is, and the size is 77, and the payload, okay, and the requested data was products and employees. The same way, this is the logs here. For employees, we have only 10 employees in the data. So that is how we add the logging, message logging policy. Quickly, let's see adding alerts. Under alerts, you come here. Actually, let me take you to here. Okay, here we are under alerts. So alerts also, you can add custom alerts and out of the box alerts. We are talking about out of the box alerts. So add alert. I want to just show you in my email, an alert will come. For example, this is important, especially when there are some issues with your application, so that you can stay on top of it and fix issues promptly. So the alert name, Dowdy City Schools alerts, I will call it, enable it, and I want information. So do you want to give you when there is warning or when it is critical? Now I'll just make it information. Alert type. Let's check, for example, you have these different alert types. I will check with a count. If the request is more than some threshold per some time unit, I want an alert. Okay. When number of occurrences is greater than 5 for at least 2 consecutive. Okay. Let me make this shorter to expedite the test. Greater than, when it is greater than 3 for 2 consecutive seconds. Oh, sorry, there is no second here. Okay, for 2 consecutive minutes. Okay, we'll just send requests and talk about other stuff in the meantime. So this is one. If you just select this one in the minutes here, it means per minute, but you can make it per 2 minutes, per 5 minutes, and so on. So if the number of requests is greater than 3, and it needs consecutive time units to send this alert. So for at least 2 consecutive minutes, if there are more than 3 requests, send requests to add emails here. So I will add my email. Now let's go to alerts. So we see alert, the alert we just created here. You see, if you click it, you can see the information here. You can also edit it or delete it. So recipient is me, and for at least 2 consecutive periods of 1 minute, when the number of occurrences are greater than 3, is going to send an alert. So let me go ahead and remove the spike control so that we can just send multiple requests. So we can go to policies, spike control, remove policy, or disable without removing it. If you want to use it later, just disable it, because we'll see order of policies later. So I don't want to remove it. That's why I just disabled it. Okay. So now, if we go to runtime manager again and click this under logs, let's see if the alert policy has been applied. Okay. See some time. After that, we'll talk about ordering policies, and that will be all for today. Okay. Okay. So what do we see? Spike control unapplied here. Okay. That means disabled or removed. And okay. So in the meantime, let's talk about order of policies. I was trying to prepare slides here, but I didn't get enough time. Okay. So what policies do we have so far? We will write the policies down here. Let me remove this. And we'll talk about the order of policies for the request versus for the response. And let me check this. Okay, the alert policy doesn't get. Let's check if it has been applied already, the alert policy. So we said for 2 consecutive minutes, if the number of requests is greater than 3, it is going to send me an alert. So for the first minute, I will make some 5, 6, and then for the next minute also I will do that. Then it should alert me. I should get an email. Send 1, 2, 3, 4. This is enough for this minute. And so some time also again, I will send more requests. I'm surprised though. Okay, here it is logging. It is logging this one. The message logging policy is what we see here. The following data was requested, and the size. Spike control shutdown. Let me find alert here. Okay. Let's send again also. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yeah, that's enough. Okay, I see them, 6 of them, 6, 7 of them here, 10, 10, 10, 10, the size of the payload, 10. Okay. Okay, now let me check my email. See, there is an alert here. 828. Okay, here is an alert. It says your API W3 Schools in environment training has received greater than 3 requests within 2 consecutive periods of 1 minute. And in the next sliding time windows, that means of 1 minute, if the number of requests is less than this, then it is going to send me another notification. Okay, settle down, just chill down, it is fine, it has been resolved. So here you can see here, your API W3 Schools environment training is no longer in an alert state. So it is no longer in an alert state, especially when there are issues, warnings, and errors. Getting alerts is very important. Okay, now let's talk about the order of the policies. Then I have a Kahoot. We have these policies. Spike control, let's write them here. We have spike control, control the number of requests per sliding time windows. I'll make this maybe 24 so that you can see it. The other one we have is client ID enforcement and message logging. Client ID enforcement and finally message logging. So the order of when you send requests, the order is from top down. You see, you can reorder them here. There is reorder here. So first, spike control has highest priority, followed by client ID enforcement, followed by message logging. Get the clock, what you want to log, you have to understand based on the order. And if you want to reorder them, let's see how you can move them up and down. This one, the spike control, for example, if I want to move it down below client enforcement, I can move it like this. So what it is going to check is, first I to check the credentials, the client ID, and then it is going to check the spike control policies, and there is message logging. Okay, so that is, I think I should not take more time than this. Maybe we'll test this another time. Just remember the order. For requests, it is top down, whereas for responses, it is bottom up. So the order of the policies is very important. We'll test it in another class. But for today's enough. I guess, did I make it less than that? Okay. So each client has to send the same username and the password with each request. This is multi-select, by the way. Each client has to send the same username and password with each request. Request is rejected if the username and password are not included. Each client can have separate username and password. Each client has to send the same client ID and client secret. This is basic authentication, simple. So this is what we pass here as authentication, basic authentication. What we specify here, we have a username and password. So that is where we pass the username and password for basic authentication secret. Okay, 7 answers. How many people? Do we have to join or we can skip? How many participants do we have? There is no next. So we have to wait the whole time. Okay, so this is username and password, the same username and password for every request for everyone. So if they don't specify username and password, it gets rejected. So the first two are correct. So people have to get the username and password to request to send to use the application in this case when it is basic authentication simple. Okay. Yeah, and the other thing is also in here, when we specify, let me remove this part, client ID and client secret, and go here, add username and password, for example, Microsoft, and some password 1 2 something. If you go to, it gets passed in the headers. If you just click headers, there is this authentication. So it decodes the username and password here, as you can see. So it is passed like this. Here are the authorization. Here is authorization, which includes the username and password, and the values are here with encoded. Okay, next question. The next question is, what is the role of conditional in message logging policy configuration? So expression to log the payload, expression to filter the message, expression to filter. I wrote these 2 times. I'm sorry. Yeah, the second one, on the top right, take it expression to filter the payload, and expression to log attributes. The one on the top right, take it as expression to filter the payload rather than the message. So this is basically in the policies. We have message logging policy, this one. Okay, let me cancel this and show you here. Edit configuration is about this one. Conditional option. It is optional. It is data with expression to filter. It is important to pay attention to such things because in interviews you could encounter such questions. That is why I included it. Okay. So yeah, perfect. Perfect. Yeah, it filters the message. Oh, I said yeah, this is my mistake. I put the second one as answer, unfortunately. So sorry. Next one, multi-select. What can we log messages? Okay. When can we log messages? As per message logging policy. So the message logging policy we just saw, do we use it to log only before calling the API, or after calling the API, or only if the API errors out, or only if the API works fine? So this means, do we log request information, response information, or both of them? This is also multi-select. So since you are able to see the screen, I can show you in the policies. In this case, message logging, edit. Here we have one before calling. It is talking about this too. You have to remember this. You can specify before calling the API, but your data with expression, like for example, if you are not sending data, you cannot put as payload. It should be logical data with expression. And from calling the API, if you are logging payload and if there is error, then it will not log the payload, rather it will give you the error message. So you have to remember you can log from the request, information about the request, and information about the response is what I want you to remember here. So this one is multi-select. Okay. Yes, perfect. Yeah, before calling the API and after calling the API, you can log. The only thing is you have to make sure you understand what you are logging, and it should make sense. Like for example, after calling the API, if you try to log query parameter, and the query parameter is in your request, then it will not get query parameter. Okay, next. Remove this. So since Kahoot has limit on the number of characters it allows, I just added a screenshot here. So read the screenshot. I think this one, actually, I posted it in the Telegram channel. So API manager is set up to manage an API from endpoint exchange. A mule application implements the API. Implements the API means there is a real implementation of that API in Runtime Manager. And this API we are talking about is an instance or a configuration. So what role does auto-discovery play in this API? It identifies services that are linked to the current API and renders them on the endpoint exchange interface. B, it links the API ID in endpoint exchange with API manager to download and enforce policies. C, it uses the API in endpoint exchange to retrieve and auto-populate API references in Endpoint Studio. D, it links the API ID in API Manager with implementation to download and enforce policies. With implementation means here, as I said again, with the implementation in Runtime Manager. Okay, perfect. So what we are talking about here is this one. So we are talking about this. So yeah, it downloads. The ID is for linking the two so that Runtime Manager can download whatever policy. We were checking in the logs, right? As soon as we apply policies in API Manager, after some seconds in Runtime Manager in the logs, it was telling us what policy has been applied or unapplied. So that it is talking about that. Question number 5. This one is also the same thing. A mule application has been deployed to Runtime Manager, and you want to apply rate limiting and client ID enforcement policies on it. I think these policies by now we know them already. What do you need to add to your MuleSoft project in Endpoint Studio to enable auto-discovery? For enabling auto-discovery, do we just add the API ID on API Manager, or do we add also the environment client ID and the client secret? So you have to remember these things. When you try to deploy your application, and if you encounter errors, you have to make sure these requirements are fulfilled. Otherwise, it may tell you your deployment may give an error. Basically. Perfect. Yes, both of them are important. Next question. Well, almost done. How do you configure client ID enforcement policy? Using custom expression or using HTTP basic authentication header, or both of them? Perfect. Yes. The base, if it is basic authentication header in here, when we send request, we pass the client ID and the client secret as username and password. If it is custom expression, then it will get it from the header or from the query parameter. You include your data with code in the custom expression. Okay, click next. This one is the last one. The same thing, we will read this and answer it. What regulates API request traffic by limiting the number of messages processed by an API and ensures that the number of messages processed within a specified time, regardless of client, does not exceed the configuration limit. So the reason that it is saying regardless of client is here. You have to pay attention here. That's the only catch. So we saw rate limiting policy, rate limiting, SLA based policy, spike control. All of these they control traffic, but in slightly different ways. We have not seen caching policy yet. We will see it next time. Yeah, so the rate limiting service level, the SLA based, it is for different clients. The limit will be different. Whereas the spike control policy, it is irrespective of the client. So the answer in this case is spike control. So you can go here under policies directory. You can read about all of them here. And if you see the SLA based, you can read here. So different clients will have different, based on the configuration, they will have different limits. Whereas the spike control, it is just per sliding time window, traffic should not be more than some number. Okay, yeah, we have to end here. Next. Okay. Thank you. Team Ocean and Team Fire. Wow. Okay. Team Sunshine. Okay. Thank you very much, guys. I will see you tomorrow. I have another meeting. I have to stop here. Thank you so much. Good night.